I saw a humanoid. Something in the woods outside my childhood home. This was rural northern Wisconsin and I was 14. Up until that day I had zero fear of the woods. I spent most of my time out there exploring and feared nothing. My parents had a lousy marriage and fought a lot and I felt more at home outside than in the house. On hot nights, I'd take a sleeping bag and sleep on the roof of an old shack on our property. I saw bears, I saw wolves. They were always more afraid of me than me them. I didn't believe in ghosts, Bigfoot, demons, or even God. I only got lost out there once when dark fell sooner than I expected. I stayed calm, found the North Star, and knew that if I continued south I'd eventually come across the old railroad tracks near my house. Even the thought of spending the night out there didn't bother me, the thought of my mom's rage when I didn't come home did. So it was summer, I had just turned 14. My mom had left my father worked all the time, sister was living on her own. Once school was out it was me and my cat, and this is before the internet or smartphones. We lived on a dead-end dirt road and around noon I took my usual stroll down the long driveway to check the mail. My cat followed me everywhere and I actually kind of relied on him to give me a heads up if there was a bear or something close by. A bit of movement behind me as I stood at the mailbox made me aware there was something across the road in the trees, but there were pesky deer everywhere. I heard a loud crash, then like something very loudly making its way through the brush. It's like every goddamned classic horror story. My brain had no capability for the thought of anything paranormal or spooky. I simply tucked the mail under my arm and headed into the woods to investigate. My cat followed close behind. I got about 10 yards in when I noticed what I hadn't noticed before. There was no noise. Nothing. It was a beautiful June day and there wasn't a single bird singing, no insects, no leaves rustling. It was absolutely silent. At the same time I registered the silence, I got that eerie feeling that something was watching me. I stopped immediately and started scanning the woods for deer. Hunters know what I'm talking about when I say you look for the shape of a deer instead of trying to pinpoint them by color. That's when I spotted it. 2 brown furry legs, the top of it concealed by tree branches. I went to sigh with relief when my cat hissed. I looked down and he was completely poofed out with his back arched. Looking at the same thing I was. I looked back up and the legs moved. Not like a deer. Like a human. Everything happened at once after that. I dropped the mail, picked up my cat by the scruff and ran for it. Whatever was out there with me was running after me. I have never run so fast in my life. I tore up the driveway, into the house, locked the door and grabbed the phone. I called my next-door neighbor who was the ex-chief of police and he came over immediately with his pistol. He checked out the spot I was in and found nothing. I was so hysterical I was in tears. He stayed with me until I was able to reach my mom and have her come get me. Of course they thought I was completely high or delusional. I know exactly what I saw and felt. It was broad daylight. I never felt safe in those woods again and stopped sleeping outside. Witnessed an alien abduction back in 2001. This takes place when I was 13. A friend of mine wanted me to help her grandparents set up their computer. I said sure and ride my bicycle to their house. I get there and clouds appear, so I decide to make this pretty quick. I set up the computer and install AOL for them, showing them all how it works and such. They go back and sit on the couch while I get my backpack to get ready to leave, as their other granddaughter, who is about 4 or 6 years old, I can't remember which, was sleeping in the other room. All of a sudden a cold breeze went through the room. It was odd as all the doors and windows were shut. The grandparents looked toward the kitchen and what I saw made me freeze in place. There were 3 creatures standing in the kitchen. 2 of them were short gray creatures with a thicker neck than described, with the eyes closer to the sides of their heads. They wore silver jumpsuits. In between them was a taller creature looking like a humanoid mantis wearing a black robe with a yellow stripe going down the middle. They walk to another room and a minute later return with the robed creature carrying the granddaughter in its arms. It's looking at me and I get the feeling it knows who I am. I don't know why I got the feeling, but I did. I was very scared. More of the situation than of them, and the grandparents were looking at them too but not doing anything. I decided to say, screw this, and fought off all the fear I could and clumsily charged toward them. I didn't even make 3 steps before the grandfather stopped me and told me they will bring her back. The creatures didn't move and continued to look at me. I couldn't get any more words out of my throat because I didn't even know what to think at this point. All of a sudden the light stretched around them and they vanished. An odd glow remained for a few seconds before fading. After a minute of an awkward silence and the grandfather repeating she will be brought back soon, I decided to leave. I rode my bicycle back home fast as I could while looking back to see if some ship was hiding in the clouds. Nothing was there and I didn't sleep that night I got home. The next day I did tell my friend what happened and she did tell me it has happened before. The grandparents and other family members have tried to stop it but to no avail. They just accepted it with a look of defeat and moved on. Granddaughter was brought back after a few hours. A while after this their whole family moved elsewhere. I've heard from other people who claim to experience similar events and I feel they are legit. When I was a child, around the age of 6, perhaps younger, I used to visit my uncle's house on occasion with my mum and nan. Each time I was there, I'd go to my uncle's bedroom to look at the mummy that laid on his bed. That's what I thought I was seeing, an adult woman that seemed to look like they were wrapped up in bandages or some material. My uncle was the kind that would tease you, or wind you up, so I never believed it was real, just something he'd rigged to scare me. Each time I went to his house, I would drag my mum or my nan into that room to show them, and frustratingly, each and every time they would claim not to be able to see a very obvious mummy laid out on the bed. It got to the point one day, after dragging my mum and nan up to my uncle's room and them not believing me, that after they left, I stayed to watch the mummy lay in the bed. I stayed in the doorway, the furthest I would ever go, with the side of the bed facing me, and glared as angrily as a little girl could at the woman in the bed. Then it sat up and turned to face me. I froze. It was when the thing started to get off the bed towards me that I discovered my legs again and ran. Years later my nan took me and a friend to my uncle's house to dog sit while he was away. It just so happened that his bedroom was where we would be having our sleepover. The room had been changed and there was no mummy this time around, but retelling the story was enough to freak us both out for the night, though it didn't stop us sleeping. My mum and nan can recall me asking about the bandaged women in the bed, and other weird things I'd seen and experienced as a child, but no one else had experienced the mummy in that house.